The afternoon sun filtered gently through the trees of a quiet city park. Children laughed in the distance, and the breeze carried the scent of fresh grass and distant food carts. But under one tall oak near the edge of the lawn, tension hung. Heavy, a group of uniformed officers stood in a semicircle, facing an elderly man who sat quietly beneath the tree. His clothes were worn, his shoes scuffed, and his hands rested on a weathered walking cane. He looked confused, not dangerous, just tired. One officer stepped forward. Tall, rigid, and clearly in command, he gripped the leash of a large German shepherd beside him. The dog, Rex, stood poised, alert, eyes fixed on the old man. "You're not allowed here anymore," the officer barked, his tone sharp. The old man looked up, blinking slowly. He said nothing, unsure of what law he had broken. "I said move," the officer repeated, "or we'll move you." A small crowd had started to gather, parkgoers drawn by the uniforms and rising tension. Some recorded with their phones. Others just watched silently. Then, without hesitation, the officer raised his voice and gave the command, "Attack!" Rex's body tensed instantly, muscles coiling like springs, ears snapping forward. The crowd collectively gasped, bracing for movement, but Rex didn't leap. He froze. His gaze remained locked on the old man, but he didn't move an inch. His legs quivered, torn between instinct and something else. "Attack!" The officer shouted again, louder, more forcefully. Still, Rex didn't obey. His tail didn't wag, but neither did it signal aggression. His body remained stiff, his head tilted ever so slightly as if searching the man's face for something. The crowd murmured, "Why isn't the dog moving?" A child whispered. The officer yanked on the leash, frustrated. Rex took one hesitant step forward, not as an attacker, but almost curious. The old man's voice trembled as he raised his hand slowly. "Please," he said, barely louder than the wind. "I don't understand. I haven't done anything wrong. I was just resting." The bystanders shifted uncomfortably. One woman lowered her phone. A younger officer beside the handler leaned closer. "Something's off," he muttered under his breath. Rex inched forward again, ignoring the tension in the leash. He sniffed the air, then gently nosed the man's coat. His posture softened. The growl faded into a quiet whimper. The handler's eyes widened in confusion. Rex was behaving completely out of character, not defiant, but emotional. His tail gave a slow, uncertain wag. The old man's eyes filled with tears. His voice cracked. "I know you," he whispered. Rex gently pressed his nose into the man's trembling hands. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The trained K9, known for his obedience, wasn't attacking. He was remembering, he was recognizing someone the world thought he'd forgotten. Rex's powerful body, once taut with anticipation, now moved with uncharacteristic gentleness. He sniffed the old man's hands, then let out a low, breathy whimper. His tail gave a small, deliberate wag. Slowly, deliberately, he sat downright. Beside the man he had just been ordered to attack, phones kept recording. Officers stood frozen. The lead handler looked down at Rex, baffled. The old man's voice quivered. "It's really you, isn't it?" His fingers moved shakily, brushing through the thick fur at the side of Rex's neck. "You remember me, Max?" At that name, Rex lifted his head. His ears twitched and his eyes seemed to soften. Another soft whimper escaped him. And then, without a sound, he leaned in and pressed his head against the man's chest. A ripple went through the crowd. The hardened K9 unit was no longer an enforcer. He had transformed into something else entirely, a dog rediscovering his home. One officer stepped forward cautiously, voice low. "Sir, do you know this dog?" The man wiped his eyes and nodded slowly. "I raised him," he said, "from a pup." He took a breath, voice steadying with emotion. "He was abandoned. Just skin and bones. I found him. Named him Max. He slept at my feet every night for 3 years. The man paused, a wave of sadness darkening his face. "But then, I lost my job. Couldn't afford food for myself, let alone a dog. I turned him over to a shelter. They said he'd get a second chance. I never saw him again." Now every officer's gaze had shifted, no longer suspicious, no longer focused on protocol. They were witnessing a reunion that transcended orders or uniforms. Rex's handler tightened the leash reflexively, still trying to process the moment, but Rex ignored the pressure, pressing his body closer to the man, as if refusing to be separated again. Then, in an almost impossible gesture of memory, Rex gently placed his paw on the man's lap. The same way he used to as a pup. The crowd gasped again. The old man broke down, sobbing freely, one hand covering his mouth as tears rolled down his face. "You remember," he choked. "After all these years?" An officer beside him turned away, blinking hard. Another lowered his weapon. What they had thought was a threat had revealed itself to be something far more powerful, a bond that time and distance had never broken. The canine captain arrived on the scene moments later, his boots loud against the path. He scanned the stunned officers and the strange scene, a canine sitting beside a weeping man. Their reunion clear to everyone. "Report," the captain demanded. A young officer stepped forward slowly. "Sir?" The dog disobeyed. He recognized the man. The captain looked down, silent for a long moment. Then he said softly, "That's not disobedience. That's memory." The silence after the captain's words was profound. Every officer present, every bystander holding a phone or a breath, now looked not at a disobedient canine, but at a hero, a dog who remembered. The captain took a step closer to Rex and the old man. He knelt down, eyeing the two quietly. Rex gave a low, almost protective growl as the captain approached, his body leaning slightly into the man's leg. "He's not attacking," the captain said softly to no one in particular. "He's defending." One officer cleared his throat. "Sir, should we remove the dog?" The captain shook his head. "He's already made his choice." The crowd, once murmuring and unsure, now stood hushed in reverence. Some began to applaud softly, overwhelmed by the emotion of the scene. The handler stepped back, loosening his grip on the leash. Rex didn't even flinch. His loyalty had found a new command, and it wasn't coming from anyone in uniform. The old man, tears still wet on his cheeks, looked up. "You don't have to let him stay. I know the rules. But I've got a small room in a shelter and not much else. If there's any way I could keep him—" The captain raised a hand. "Say no more." He turned to the handler. "Start the paperwork." Gasps moved through the crowd again, this time joyful. "You're retiring him?" An officer asked in disbelief. The captain nodded. "Effective immediately. The man who trained this dog, loved this dog, raised him, gets the right to take him home." The handler stepped forward with a nod of quiet respect. "He's yours." The old man's face collapsed with emotion. "Thank you. Thank you," he said again, over and over. As if the words alone weren't enough, one officer brought over a clipboard with the release documents. The old man signed them with trembling hands. "You're going home." "Boy," he whispered to Rex, who wagged his tail as if he understood every word as the sun began to set. The two walked slowly down the sidewalk, the old man's steps uneven, Rex walking in perfect rhythm beside him. No leash, no command. Just two souls reunited. Rex looked back only once, his gaze sweeping over the officers he had once served alongside, then never again. The captain turned to the others. "Sometimes," he said, "duty knows when to let go." Later that night, the story went viral. News stations picked up the footage, highlighting the rare moment when training bowed to love. Comments flooded in messages of awe, of joy, of tears shed for a bond stronger than protocol, and from that day on, anyone who heard the name Rex didn't just think of a police dog, they thought of loyalty, of memory, of a miracle beneath an old tree, when a dog remembered the man who never forgot him.